Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Blique in a 15+2 game on leechess.org. Let's open with e4. My opponent is 21-10, and we're going to have a Sicilian. Let's see, last time I played the Smith-Morra Gambit, but let's go into an open Sicilian. I've had a rough go of it in my past couple standard games on Leechess. I've had trouble on the clock. I've got 2 draws in those 2 games. So let's try to improve our results today. So g6, this is the accelerated dragon. Black will put the bishop on g7. I'm just going to develop normally. I could go for c4 and establish the Maraxi bind, but I'm more comfortable with knight c3, bishop e3, leaving the pawn on c2. So that's what I'll do. Okay, so d6, this is a funky move order, because usually they play knight f6. I'm just going to play bishop c4, and if knight f6, probably f3. If black now plays queen b6, there's some weird stuff that can happen, but black does not do that. Okay, so we could transpose into a normal dragon now, queen d2. And let's assume bishop d7, castles queenside, rook c8. That would be the dragon proper. Okay, again, black keeps us guessing. Knight d7, trying to send the knight over to the queenside in anticipation of me castling over there. I have come across this line before. I'm trying to think if it makes sense to go kingside now. Just because of the knight b6, bishop b3, knight a5 plan, which will probably occur if I go long. I mean, I don't think that's something I should be too afraid of, but do I want to burn the time on my clock trying to figure out how to combat that? If I go short, though, I think black could liquidate, trade on d4, and then play queen b6 at the very end. And I probably have no advantage. Okay, let's go long. And if knight b6, bishop b3, queen a5, knight a5, I'm thinking queen d3 might be the move. But this move instead, So now I'm thinking maybe bishop e2. Point being there, if knight b6, perhaps b3 is playable. Usually b3 is not a move you want to make with the bishop sitting on g7, observing the entirety of that long diagonal. But with black's knight blocking on e5, I could probably get away with that. If I play bishop b3 on the other hand, they could play knight c5 or knight b6, and I don't have that queen d3 resource. I could play queen e2. Somehow that's not as attractive, though. Okay, bishop e2. I'm trying to play faster, so let's not dilly-dally. Let's try b3. What's the worst that could happen? I guess something bad could happen to the c3 knight, which now has only one defender, the white queen. I still have aspirations of launching an attack against black's king, though. I may have to play knight d5 if black persists in attacking the c3 knight with moves like rook c8 and queen c7. King b1 looks like a good safety move at the moment. There's also bishop h6, but I don't know that I'm in that great of shape to do it quite yet. I feel like I need to secure my king first. Not looking at moves like f4 because that creates weaknesses. Black could jump into the g4 square. h4 does come to mind as well, but on h4, rook c8, h5, what am I doing about queen to c7? That idea is going to persist. Maybe knight b5 in that case? That wouldn't be too out of the question. There's also the question of what to do if h4, h5, because oftentimes white will play g4 and sacrifice a pawn. That looks pretty fun. Let's try h4. I'm quite curious how black will react to that. So they instantly play h5. Now I'm seriously considering playing g4, h takes g4, h5. And it's early, but I'd almost be going all in on the king side in an effort to checkmate black. I don't have to do that if I don't want to. I mean, my position is fine in the center and on the queen side, but this opening is all about momentum. Who gets momentum attacking the opposing king? And I might have it here with g4. It's going to stir the pot, that's for sure. Okay, He's playing fast, so maybe he'll be prone to making a mistake. When you are facing fast players, I think it does make sense to increase the complexity of the position in the hope that they do continue blitzing out their moves and make an error in a position where they should be taking time. I sort of get that impression with this player. Of course, I'm still trying to make objectively good moves, but this is playing into my thought process as well. Okay, so the capture on f3. I was just going to play knight takes in this case. I think h takes g6 is too crazy, giving up the bishop. The open h-file could lead to some checkmating ideas, but knight takes seems to be indicated right here. I don't see a good reason to deviate from that, so let's play it. And now knight g4 is interesting. But I can just play bishop d4. But then they have bishop h6. I thought I could play bishop d4 in response to knight g4, but that may not be the case. Nevertheless, black plays rook c8. Okay, so they're hunting this knight, no doubt. I'd love to trade off the dark square bishops and then play h takes g6 and have my queen make an appearance on h6. This is the tried and true method for checkmating black in the Dragon, as described by Bobby Fischer. But let's consider my options here. So knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, bishop d4. Simply threatening to take and then take on g6. That's a simple line. Gets rid of this pesky knight. There's also knight d4. But knight d4 seems more complicated to me, and my queen will still be tethered to the defense of the knight on c3. So I'm leaning towards knight takes e5 at present. Yeah, I don't think h takes g6, knight takes f3 is going to be working out too well. Unless, okay, h takes g6, knight takes f3, bishop takes f3. If black then plays a capture on c3, I have rook h8. Maybe not, because they can take with the bishop. That line looks murky. I kind of want to play it, though. This is a key moment. Yeah, h takes g6, knight takes f3, bishop takes f3. There's probably just too many good moves there for black. Even f takes g6 might be okay, and then my light square bishop would be hanging, and the knight on c3 is double attacked. So I'm still leaning towards knight takes e5. It would be nice to have my next move already in mind after I play knight takes e5, and bishop d4 is the move I mentioned, but is there something better? I can't really see a good reply for black to bishop to d4. I think they're going to have to reckon with their weak king side very quickly there. Okay, so let's do it. This is the benefit of this g4 move I played on move 14. We rip open the g and the f files, and we get our pawn up to h5, creating tension with the pawn on g6. Again, we'd love to open the h file if we could. So bishop d4, making way for the queen, also stopping the attack on c3. There's also knight d5, but I don't want to lose the momentum once again. Knight takes d5, I'd be forced to take some time to recapture. H takes g6. Black could always reply with this. I feel like I should keep that tension for the moment. So let's go with this move. And see how that knight on b6 is restricted. That was my idea with b3 way back when, on move 12. So trying to keep that knight from jumping into one of these squares. And hopefully the more pieces that get traded, the more evident it is that this knight is a bad piece. Okay, so queen takes. And now if queen c7, I do have rook d3. I hope. But then he could play queen c5 and insist on a queen trade, couldn't he? That's annoying. Can I just play h takes g6 right here? But then black can recapture. Point of h takes g6 would be to threaten rook h8 mate. But here, I get a check. King is running. I check again. That must be mate. I mean, king e8, I take on f8 with one of the rooks. Or king e6, there's bishop g4. Black is getting shredded there. Okay, so h takes g6. Is this winning? Also, what's going on if h takes g6, pawn e5? Surely that must be considered. Queen e3, and if queen takes on c3, I again have rook h8. We got to make sure that's winning, though. Idea, king takes h8, queen h6, followed by queen h7, checkmate. Rook d3 was my backup move. I'd like to play h takes g6. No doubt about it. H takes g6, e5. There's the capture on f7 too, but queen e3 somehow looks better to me, threatening rook h8. If queen takes c3, rook h8 check. Black is threatening mate on c2, so we got to do everything fast. King up to g7, queen h6, king f6, rook f1 check, king e7. He's getting away there, I think. So maybe on h takes g6, e5, I have to play the capture on f7. But there, too, I don't want black to get away. Okay, let's play this move, because we've established that black cannot take on c3, at least. So he might play e5. I think that is probably black's best shot. f6 is probably too risky. I think rook d3 again would be a good reply to that. So you see, I am paying a price for the knight being undefended, but now black's king is completely exposed. Okay, e5. So here's the choice. Do I play queen d2, or do I play... Or sorry, queen e3 or queen d2, or do I play the capture on f7? Queen d2 is interesting, by the way, because then not only can black not take on... Well, they might be able to take on c3, actually, because of that rook h8 line we looked at where black is getting away. But I was thinking queen d2 defends the c-pawn. Was the one thing I liked about that move. I mean, can I find a way to kill him after this move? Because that would save us a lot of work, I think. But even rook takes f7 might be surviving for black after that. This is a tough spot. The position is super sharp. And I don't have lots and lots of time to think about it. 5 minutes. Queen d2. Queen takes c3. Rook h8 check, king g7. Queen h6, king f6. I can play g7 check. Why have I been missing g7 check? That probably wins. Okay, so that's an important point. The fact that I have g7 check. So queen d2 or queen e3 doesn't matter. Queen e3 is my first instinct, but queen d2 again has the benefit of defending the c2 point. So queen e3, let's just run through this again. Queen takes c3, rook h8 check. He cannot take it, so king here is forced. Queen h6, king f6, g7 check, king e7, take. Yeah, and that's going to win the other rook. Black has to take to avoid mate. We're just completely winning there, if not outright mating. So what can black reasonably do after this? Do they have to take here? Because then I'm getting the queen into h6 anyways, and I would assume that carnage is going to commence after that. Yeah, I think so. Okay, queen e3 it is. Hopefully I don't regret not going to d2, but that's my excessively cautious instincts talking. I'm playing for the attack, not to defend the mate on c2, but you never know. There might be a line that crops up where the queen was better on d2. So quite simply, we have this threat. And then if king takes h8, queen h6 check, and we're going to mate him on h7. And black's king side is so bare that it's difficult to conceive of a defense. He's got plenty of time to think about it, but the trajectory of my attack is clear at this point. Ruthless, straightforward. Okay, so he's going to take. So I was just thinking queen h6 against that. Threatening queen takes g6, also threatening this a lot of the time. There's also rook h8. Rook h8 is funny. Do I want to mess with that? Because rook h8, black cannot take the rook. Is the nice thing about that move. And if king f7, rook f1, that should kill. What about rook h8, king g7, queen h6, king f6? I just take on f8 in that case. Rook h8 is such a cool move. I almost can't resist passing it up. But I think queen h6 is also just crushing. They're probably pretty darn similar. Let's go with the check. This is the more fun move. So one line is if king f7, rook f1, bishop f5, I can play rook h7 and go in the queen on c7. And then go pick up the bishop after that. It's over. Quite possibly queen h6 would have been better there. But this one's a forcing move with 2.5 minutes and seeing lots of lines where I just outright win. It looks like the way to go. And it looks like he's going to be a good sport and let me checkmate him. Yeah, I mean, king f7 or king g7 would have been best, but he resigned. King h8, rook coming over to h1. Okay, so an opponent who played very, very fast. We've encountered many opponents like this who basically play at blitz speed in a 15-minute game. He says, man, if I beat you, I was going to quit chess, LOL. No, you shouldn't quit chess if you beat a stronger player. That should be impetus for you to get better, Blique. And yes, of course, this will be on YouTube. So let us know your comments in the chat. But I would say the biggest thing that stood out was your time usage. You played very, very fast. I mean, again, I can't say that my time usage is ever perfect in these videos. You guys know that I often take a lot of time. But like that, playing that fast, especially when the position became sharp, it's a recipe for disaster. Then again, if I had spent a little more time and wasn't able to find the solution, we might be talking about how my opponent played very well and played good moves quickly and kept me under pressure on the clock throughout. So hindsight is 20/20, but I think you just have to use more time, though. You didn't even use a third of your time. But very much appreciated. I like the fact that you're a channel viewer, and I've been playing a lot more of you guys recently, so thanks, Blique. So I'm going to check the theory on this line. We arrived at this knight d7 variation via kind of a funky move order. As I mentioned, most players who play the accelerated dragon, they do not play d6 on move number 6 here. They'll play knight f6 in a bid perhaps to play d5 in one move. That's one of the appealing things about the accelerated dragon, that you can play the d-pawn 2 squares forward in one go. But d6, I played bishop c4. One trick, move order-wise, or one thing to know from the white side is don't play f3 too soon in this opening. You should really only play f3 when the knight is at f6 and knight g4 is a legitimate threat. I do see people playing f3 prematurely, and that can run into issues with queen to b6, hitting d4 and also b2. So bishop c4, knight f6, and now I played f3. Castle, queen d2, knight d7. I had some vague recollection of this line, but yeah, I was pretty much making it up here. I thought the line goes knight b6, bishop b3, knight a5. And black zeroes in on the c4 square, also tries to hunt down the light square bishop. So after knight c to e5, I was on my own. And I chose this kind of committal but intriguing idea with bishop back to e2 and b3, trying to deny black the use of the c4 square, and trying to prove that this knight is a bad piece. The downside is that I weaken my knight on c3. I have to play a pawn move around my king, my castle king on the queen side. So whether that's worth the trade-off, I don't know. That remains to be seen. I'd say black's first major decision is when I play h4. whether they want to play h5 and deny me the opportunity to continue advancing, or just ignore my play and just play rook c8. I think rook c8 might be a more challenging move, because if rook c8, h5, queen c7, they're on the knight, and I can't proceed with my kingside attack until I address the knight issue. I might have played like knight b5, one of the knights to b5 there, but I wasn't sure. So black played h5, and I figured, okay, let's go ahead with g4. I have had some success with this in the past. When I was an e4 player, I played some dragon games where, in response to h5, I would play g4, and then as soon as they take, you continue pushing with h5. This is a theoretically approved idea. Not that it refutes the dragon or anything, but there are lines you can find with this device, just ignoring the g-pawn, pushing h5, seeking open avenues on the king side. Really, almost all these decisions are tough for black. In a tournament game, I think Blique would have spent a lot more time, or at least I hope they would. The way the game played out, it felt like white was getting there a move ahead of black. So we traded on e5, and then I played bishop d4, we swap. And black gets queen c7 in, hitting the knight, but h takes g6 just opens everything up. And the fact that black cannot play queen takes c3 due to rook h8 mate is what kills him here. And I think f takes g6 is going to get refuted by rook h8 check, king f7, rook f1. I think that's one line that should just crush. Maybe there's bishop f5 there, but I would really doubt that that works. Rook takes f8 should be sufficient. So black played the interference move e5. I pulled the queen back to e3. And as I'll show in the analysis, this is going to lose to rook h8 based on that line I calculated. It took me a while to see that king g7, queen h6, king f6 is running into g7. I don't know why I was missing that. I was focusing on rook f1, but g7 is crushing. So here, and I think at this point, queen h6 or rook h8 win. Didn't see much of an issue with either one, but this was a more forcing move. At the very least, I think I win like a rook for a queen out of this line, so I was happy with that. And mate was coming in 2 moves. King h8, rook h1 check, or actually, sorry, 3 moves. Bishop h3, rook takes h3, queen h7, and take the queen, checkmate. So we'll check the opening, and we'll check some of those key decisions, especially around the time that h4, h5, g4 is played. On to the analysis board. Okay, so breaking down the average centi-pawn loss, I had 1 inaccuracy, 0 mistakes, 0 blunders for a 24 average centi-pawn loss. Blique had 3 inaccuracies, 1 mistake, 1 blunder for a 68 average centi-pawn loss. So going to the opening. So let's look at knight d7. Turn on the opening book. It's been played many times. Over 100 games in the database. So castle's queenside. I was describing how if I castle short, I think one thing black could do just to kill all of white's fun is take on d4, just swap a bunch of pieces, and then play queen to b6. Now, I would doubt if I really have much here after the queens come off the board. And the game is not nearly as interesting when both sides castle short in the dragon. The way to take on the dragon is to castle long. So that's what I did. Yeah, so seems like my memory was correct. Knight b6 is the main move. Played in 106 games. Knight d to e5, on the other hand, has only been played in 3, is that right? 3 games? Looks legitimate. The computer actually likes it. Top computer move. But yeah, knight b6 is how things usually develop. Knight b6, bishop b3, knight a5. And knight c4 is pretty pesky, so yeah, queen d3. I think this was in my memory banks. It was pretty tucked away, but I do recall something like this where you try to stop a knight from coming to c4, and black can take on b3 and get your light score bishop, but white still has aspirations for an attack. And if this trade occurs, by the way, this knight on b6 is still poorly placed. No, it can't come into these squares. Might have to reposition. Is white that much better here? I don't know. They've won 4 games and lost none from this position, but you can see the computer eval. It's not anything crazy for white, and black does have the pair of bishops. So back to knight c to e5. Okay, so the engine approves of bishop back to e2. because I wanted to avoid this happening. Or, if after bishop b3, knight b6, and the fact that I can't play queen d3 means I can't go into a position similar to that other line. I guess I could play queen e2. But okay, bishop e2, knight here, b3, computer likes it, okay. Feels good to see that. Yeah, I wasn't sure, because I'm going out on a limb by weakening the knight. There's not many lines of the dragon where playing b3 with this monster lurking on g7 is a smart idea, but given that the knight is on e5 blocking the bishop, I think I can get away with it here. So black plays bishop d7. And now I go with the time-honored strategy of attacking on the king side. As Fischer said, you open the h-file, you play bishop h6, and then you sack mate. Bishop h6 is especially important because you want to trade off that dragon bishop. That's the gatekeeper to black's king, and if you can get rid of that defender, your queen can often make a quick appearance on h6. Okay, so here, I was mentioning that I thought rook c8 was the best try. The computer likes queen c7. That's probably similar. Let's see, h5 and then bring a rook over. Yeah, maybe even the f rook. There's something to be said for bringing the f rook over. When black plays rook fc8 and an eventual bishop h6 does come, because there's no rook on f8, black may be able to drop the bishop back to h8 because bishop takes f8 would not be a threat. That's sort of abstract at the moment. It may not even apply to this position, but that is one reason to play rook fc8 instead of rook a to c8. Also, if black's attacking, the rook could be useful on the a file, should a5, a4 ever be playable. So it does appear that black should get going with their c-file play, put a couple major pieces there, queen to c7, rook coming to c8, try to attack the knight on c3. And I probably would have to speculate with the knight coming to b5 to counteract that. Either right here or probably after h5. I think I would have done it like this and then, yeah, maybe bring a knight in now. Another benefit here of leaving this rook on a8 is that the knight is not attacking a7 in that case. If black had used the other rook, so rook a c8, let's say, knight b5 is probably a lot more irritating to black. Yeah, hitting the queen and also the pawn. I don't know that I would take this pawn or be thrilled to take it, but it's another thing for black to think about. So h4, black played h5. And I had a bit of a think as to how to play this whole position, but g4 seemed like the most straightforward. And black's knight maneuver, bringing the knight to d7 and then to e5, that cost some time, so g4 is probably the critical test of black's entire setup. Full speed ahead. H takes g4, and we're not playing g4 again to do like this, or, I mean, maybe sometimes we can play f4. I wasn't really thinking about that here. Because I just thought that some knight move would slow me down. This somehow doesn't feel right to me, but maybe even still. Knight e2, and I can proceed with my attack. Yeah, maybe still, this might be okay. h5 feels like the more natural attacking move. So h5, black took on f3. I recaptured. And they played rook c8, and the eval goes way up after that move. So best for black is to play knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, and now put something on the c-file, so rook here. And what's the big difference? Is the difference that after bishop d4 here, the threat of taking black's bishop is not as big? Or what's the... The only difference in the position is that my bishop's on f3 instead of e2, right? Maybe that blocks some f-file attacks when I'm trying to mate black. I would assume that this is still bad for him. Maybe not. F takes g6. Yeah, and you can see that my bishop being on f3 hinders some of my attacking potential right now. I mean, it looks suicidal for black to do this, right? But if I check, king comes here. It's really annoying that I can't play rook f1 check right now. And black might even dance away. And then I'll have to think about the attack on c3 and the pawn behind it. That's a subtlety that's hard to appreciate. And again, I think based on how fast black was playing, that's not something you would ever pick up on unless you were spending a decent amount of time. So knight takes f3 could be good, playing along the same lines, because the bishop hinders my attacking potential on the f-file. That's a nice point. The engine still prefers white after knight e2, so just abandoning the c-file altogether. Yeah, this tension does favor me, and despite being down a pawn here, I'm completely happy to play with many attacking ideas possible. Probably if I got another move, I would play bishop h6, and then, if allowed, take on g7, take on g6, and get the queen into h6. Black probably will try to do something to push back against that, like queen c7, making sure my queen can't leave the defense of c2. Yeah, queen c7 prevents bishop h6, because this would be losing for white now. I can't take the bishop without getting mated. But black played rook to c8. I took on e5. Bishop takes. And now I just want to neutralize that dark square bishop. Even though it's out in the center of the board, it is still the primary defender of black's king. In fact, almost the only defender of black's king. Knight b1 is a funny move. I didn't think about knight b1 at all. A backward knight move. The engine vastly prefers knight b1 to bishop d4, even though bishop d4 seems like the way forward. When you're attacking, you have this inclination to want to play forward moves. You almost never think about backward moves when you're outright attacking, trying to mate your opponent's king. Yeah, if I played knight b1 here, you could probably suspect me of engine abuse. I don't think I would play that move, even if I thought about this position longer. Bishop d4 seems so natural to me, trying to block that bishop. Now it changed its mind and wants to play knight b5 even. Yeah, same thing. I don't think I would really think about that move. I guess I could see the value of knight b5. Knight b5 does stop the queen from coming to c7. That makes more sense than knight b1, in my opinion. Then again, the computer is changing its mind. I mean, the eval is kind of bopping around. Yeah, it said plus 3.4 on this move, but then when you play knight b5, it drops to plus 1.6. So the position is probably complex enough where the computer is still trying to parse through all the lines. Now, bishop d4 might be okay. I was just concerned when I saw the eval drop from being basically winning for white to less than 1 now. So bishop d4, bishop takes. Yeah, I think if black does not take, then I'm taking here and taking on g6, and it's going to be similar issues to the game for black. So take. Wow, and I can just avoid taking the bishop right now and play h takes g6. Huh. That shouldn't completely surprise us, because in the Sicilian Dragon, the initiative matters more than material. Really, for any position where you're trying to checkmate the guy, the initiative can easily take precedence over the material count. But yeah, h takes g6 is gutsy. That's cool. So let's explore that line. H takes g6. So if black just blindly eats material, bishop takes c3, then queen h6, and he's going to have to eat a bullet. Queen h7. Yeah, black can't stop that move. You can just give it some spite checks or play rook e8 and get mated in a couple moves on f7. So h takes g6. What if black plays the bishop back to g7, trying to deny queen h6? That seems natural. I don't know if I can trust this eval. You see how it's just changing. So take on f7. Probably king takes is going to be bad due to like a bishop h5 move that can be played almost any point. Rook dg1, the quiet move, is just deadly here. Lining up against the bishop. Probably threatening rook takes g7, king takes g7, queen h6, king f7, and then bishop h5, mate. That's a cool line. Even this looks complicated, though, given the amount of time I had. Like, I doubt I would do this. Same thing in a tournament game. I think I'd heavily weigh the complexity of the position and how much time I had on my clock. Because h takes g6, you got to be absolutely certain you're winning. You are sacrificing a piece and potentially more. It crossed my mind. It just, yeah, it's a move I would need much more time to think about playing, as opposed to the straightforward capture, where I still have an attack and I haven't had to invest much material. Only a pawn. But going back to that line again, h takes g6, bishop g7, take f7. Best move is rook takes. Rook dg1 as well. What am I threatening here? Probably queen h6 is the big threat, followed by queen h8 mate. Yeah, there's even cool stuff like if this happens, and then here, let's say black tries to run away with king f8, we're mating in this manner now. And the rook on f7 blocks the king from escaping. So lots of cool mating patterns. After queen h6, black has to throw in rook f1. Yeah, because if I take with the rook, then I would lose my queen. The rook on g1 is no longer pinning the king. And then bishop takes f1, queen takes c3, queen h8 check, king f7, bishop c4. Yeah, I mean, you guys see what I'm saying? Like, there's no way a human would be fully confident playing this as white, especially with the amount of time I had. I think most everyone's going to play queen takes d4 there, even though the computer describes that as an inaccuracy. Okay, so queen takes d4, and this is the key moment of the game. Queen c7 just blunders it away for black. I don't think I even saw g5, the move that the engine is proposing, trying to block the attack. I should know that this move was possible, but yes, this is a good way to shelter the black king. And if I play h6, trying to give mate on g7, black can play f6 and build a wall of pawns, stopping me from reaching this square. And if h7, black will happily go to h8, and my own pawn is going to get in the way. That is one of the problems when you delay the capture too long on g6. There are circumstances where black can advance past and make you regret the fact that you have this pawn remaining on the board. It blocks your rook from entering. I think we both missed that move was possible, g5. So if g5, rook dg1 looks natural, trying to threaten this. f6, and these meager pawns, these measly black f and g pawns prevent me from realizing my attacking potential here. The engine says I don't have to panic yet, but compared to the game, this is night and day for black. Rook g3, probably trying to combine attack and defense. Guard the c3 knight. Get ready to play rook g1 and sack on g5, maybe. Rook c5, that looks like a good defensive move for black. This is a square that's often utilized by the rook and the dragon. It defends laterally, holds the pawn on g5. If black had played g5, I would rather be in black's shoes, particularly given the time that we both had remaining. So I'm glad that move was not played. I mean, on the one hand, I wish that I had played the best move here. It maybe is knight b5 or knight b1, but I also am recognizing my potential and just my limited calculation faculties in a very difficult position. My carbon-based calculation faculties here, and it's just a hard position to play as a human under time pressure. Simple as that. But right around here, I think this is where black has to slow down, even before here, but as you see, this queen c7 move is game over after h takes g6, whereas if black had played g5, we're playing for all results. So queen c7, h takes g6, and again, if black takes on c3, we have rook h8 mate. And how else to defend? Not too many options. There's e5. If f6, I think I was considering a couple different things against that. Yeah, I can play queen e3 because rook h8 is still a threat. This time, the mating pattern is going to be like this, and mate on h7. So probably queen e3 is what I would do. And black has to play rook f7, give up an entire rook. Well, I was going to say to avoid mate, but actually queen h6, they even can't avoid mate. This threat is too powerful. White's getting there first. Oh yes, and this one, I think, is just going to be met by this series of checks. This is the same position we were analyzing earlier, except the bishop is on e2 rather than f3. And that makes this very easy for white due to rook f1 check. Probably bishop f5 is the only move. If king e8, there's mate. And king e6, there's also going to be devastation. Mate in a couple. So yes, probably bishop f5, but I was thinking I probably would have just played rook takes f8 here. So that if rook takes f8, I can take, and black does not have two attackers on c3 anymore. And I've just gone up a piece. And I would assume that if king takes, I can take on f5. Maybe not. I was thinking this would win, but maybe they're getting away. So instead, in this case, if rook takes f8, king takes f8, I'd probably give a check first. King here. Check again. This is a little complicated. King back to f8. Queen takes g6. Threatening rook takes f5. Okay, and this is winning. I would assume king e8 is bad for some reason. Check. Okay. Yeah, and blocking on d7 is going to be a bad idea. They're going to get mated. Yeah, this is over as well. Bishop b5 is an important move there. So the rook coming to h8 and then to f1 would be lights out. So black played e5, and I spent a little time considering whether to play queen e3 or queen d2 here. Not sure it really matters. There's also g takes f7, but I didn't want to give black any semblance of escaping like this. This line also wins, though, apparently. And now queen back to d2, probably because I'm going to get to g5 in a lot of cases. Let's just see. Queen takes c3. I can even get to d6 now that the queen is not defending it. Okay. Yeah, I would assume rook h8 here. King f7, bishop h5. Too many pieces converging on black's king. They're like piranhas just getting to the king so quickly, using the open lines. But queen e3 is also plus 10. And once more, just to emphasize it, if the capture on c3 occurs, I've got check. And if black takes, it's the familiar mating pattern. Good one to burn into your brain. And also the line that took me a while to find for some reason, so I should have been able to see it faster, is queen takes c3, rook h8 check. If king g7, I can win with queen h6, king f6, and now g7 is the simplest. I was getting hung up on rook f1 and seeing ghosts like maybe black can play bishop f5 or king e7 or something there, but g7 check is nice and tidy, forcing king e7, and then I was thinking take f8, but yes, this is also mate, isn't it? King comes back, take on f8, checkmate. So f takes g6. Oh, okay, and the computer does like rook h8. Let's just see if queen h6 was also winning. I think it probably was. Yeah, this is also a huge amount of material. Bishop f5, I can probably just take, because black can't take on c3. Yeah, so queen h6 is also taking care of business, but rook h8 is pretty flashy. And black took, but if the king runs away, so king f7, I can play, I was thinking check here. And if bishop f5 trying to block the file, rook h7. And then wherever the king moves, just go scoop up the queen, and then take f5 and win the game. Too much material. King g7 will be a similar story. King g7, queen h6, king goes to the f-file, check, and it's going to be over soon. So Blique took, and just mating a few moves. Game could have concluded king h8, rook h1, bishop h3, rook takes h3, queen h7, take the queen, checkmate. Okay, so thank you for the game, Blique. This was an instructive dragon game, I think. It wasn't the main line of the dragon with black playing bishop d7 or some other treatment of this position, but I think it showcased the attacking potential that white has and what black should be on the lookout for. There's some common themes like what happens if white plays h4. Black has a choice whether to play h5 and stop the pawn from coming up, or just let white play h5, try to attack on the queen side. We talked about the importance of, if you do make this g4 break, not slowing down and continuing to press on the king side. I'm not worried about the pawn count here. I'm just trying to open lines. We talked about the importance of black's dark square bishop, the lone defender of their king, and how you want to try to trade it off. That played heavily into my decision to play on move 18, bishop d4, although knight b5 or knight b1 could have been better. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one and picked up a thing or two. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I'll be back soon with another video. As always, thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.